got to get rid of her." Those were the urgent words reportedly spoken by Terry Mandel to her husband, comedy legend, and Deal or No Deal host Howie Mandel sometime between 2006 and 2007. The target of her concern, a little-known backup briefcase model named Meghan Markle. For decades, Meghan has crafted a carefully curated narrative about her time on one of America's most popular game shows, a story of objectification, of feeling diminished, of being reduced to nothing more than a pretty face holding a briefcase. But what if the real story was far more complex, far more calculated, and far more revealing about the woman who would become the Duchess of Sussex? What did Meghan really want during those years in the Deal or No Deal studio? And why are people who worked with her finally starting to speak out? Join us as we uncover the truth behind the briefcase, the ambition that knew no bounds, and the pattern of behavior that would follow Meghan from Hollywood to the halls of royalty. It all began quietly on an ordinary afternoon in 2024. Royal commentator Kinsey Schofield sat down with comedy icon Howie Mandel, the man who hosted Deal or No Deal from December 19, 2005 through its original run ending in 2009. What started as a casual conversation about his decades in entertainment would soon expose cracks in a narrative Meghan Markle had spent years constructing. I was with Howie Mandel yesterday. Schofield revealed during a November 2024 appearance on Dan Wooten Outspoken, her voice carrying the weight of someone who had just uncovered something significant. Host of Deal or No Deal, and I got intel on Meghan. The revelation came almost casually, yet its implications were seismic. Mandel, who had remained largely silent about his former briefcase models for nearly 2 decades, had finally opened up not with spite, but with facts. He showed Schofield photographs from his time on the show, including images of Meghan in the studio. But it was what one of his longtime colleagues revealed that would shatter the carefully constructed image Meghan had presented to the world. One of his co-workers, who's worked with him for 30 years and also worked with Meghan on Deal or No Deal, said Meghan was a backup girl. Schofield explained her words deliberate and measured. She wasn't even one of the main core. You know, if somebody called in sick, if somebody couldn't show up, had an audition, they would call Meghan. The implications were staggering. For years, Meghan had positioned herself as a main cast member of the show. Someone who stood under the bright lights episode after episode, experiencing the alleged objectification she would later describe in her March 2021 interview with Oprah Winfrey. And again during her short-lived podcast, Archetypes, in October 2022. But according to those who were actually there in the studio day after day, the reality was markedly different. Not only do none of us remember her, the unnamed colleague told Mandel, we were shocked at her commentary about feeling like a bimbo and feeling less than because we don't remember, like we never saw her on set. She wasn't memorable. She wasn't around, like she was basically just a backup girl. This wasn't the first time questions had been raised about Meghan's version of events. Royal biographer and socialite Lady Colin Campbell had previously shared on Wooten's show that she had heard troubling reports about Meghan's behavior during those Deal or No Deal years, reports that painted a picture not of a woman being objectified, but of someone desperately trying to leverage every opportunity into something more. Mrs. Mandel is the one who told Howie to get rid of Meghan, Lady Colin Campbell revealed during the November 2024 broadcast, because Meghan was trying to up her ante and was trying to cultivate Howie Mandel. According to Campbell, whose sources have proven reliable throughout her decades covering high society and royalty, Meghan had a specific strategy. Whenever she was around and he was there, she would try to buttonhole him and have ideas, and that she could advance her case, Campbell explained. I mean, evidently, if Howie Mandel walked into a room, Meghan would shoot across it and be right there beside him. The pattern, according to multiple sources, became noticeable enough that Terry Mandel felt compelled to intervene. Whether out of professional concern or personal discomfort, she allegedly made it clear to her husband Meghan Markle needed to go. And go she did. What makes this revelation particularly striking is its source. This isn't gossip from tabloid reporters or speculation from royal watchers. This is information coming directly from the host of the show himself, a man who had no apparent reason to fabricate or embellish someone who had maintained professional silence for nearly 2 decades. To understand the significance of these revelations, we must travel back to the woman Meghan Markle was before the world knew her name, before the royal wedding on May 19, 2018, before the Oprah interview on March 7, 2021, before the Netflix documentary that premiered on December 8, 2022. Rachel Meghan Markle was born on August 4, 1981 in Los Angeles, California, to Thomas Markle, a television lighting director, and Doria Ragland, a social worker and yoga instructor. From an early age, Meghan was exposed to the entertainment industry through her father's work on shows like Married, with Children, and General Hospital. She was ambitious, driven, and determined to make it in Hollywood, a town notorious for crushing dreams as often as it creates stars. After graduating from Northwestern University in 2003 with a double major in theater and international studies, Meghan returned to Los Angeles to pursue acting. What followed were the typical years of struggle that every aspiring actor faces: small roles, rejections, auditions that led nowhere. She appeared in brief spots on shows like General Hospital, where her father had connections, CSI NY, and Without a Trace, often credited with roles so minor they barely registered: nurse, hot girl, federal officer. It was during this period of hustling and grinding that Meghan landed her gig with Deal or No Deal. The show, which premiered on December 19, 2005 on NBC, was an instant sensation. Hosted by germaphobe comedian Howie Mandel, the game show featured contestants choosing from 26 briefcases held by beautiful models hoping to win up to $1 million. The show's format was simple, but its ratings were explosive, often drawing 15 million viewers per episode during its peak. For the models officially called the briefcase models, but more commonly known as the Deal or No Deal girls, the job was straightforward: look beautiful, stand in position, open briefcases when called upon, and smile. Many of the women who held these positions went on to significant success. Claudia Jordan became a television and radio personality. Layla Milani built a hair care empire. Aubrey Lemon transitioned into hosting and fitness modeling. The show was a legitimate stepping stone for many. But for Meghan, according to the recent revelations, the role was even more modest than what those other successful women experienced. She wasn't even in the main rotation. She was a backup someone called in when the regular girls couldn't make it. During these years, Meghan was also involved in a relationship that would define much of her pre-royal life. She met Trevor Engelson, a talent manager and producer, sometime around 2004. Engelson was working his way up in Hollywood, eventually producing films and managing talent. Friends described their relationship as serious from the start. Meghan and Trevor were engaged in 2010 and married on September 10, 2011 in a ceremony at the Jamaica Inn in Ocho Rios, Jamaica. Those who knew Meghan during this period describe a woman of fierce ambition, not as an insult, but as an observation. Meghan has never been shy in coming forwards, Lady Colin Campbell noted. She'd get a job. She'd then drive the director and producer crazy. She shouldn't have 2 lines. She should have 25. This pattern of taking any opportunity and immediately trying to expand it, to leverage it, to transform it into something bigger became a defining characteristic. It was hustle, certainly. But it was also something more: an inability to be satisfied with the role she had been given, always pushing for more, always angling for the next level. No matter what she got, she was always pushing for more, Campbell explained. And this used to turn people off. This was one of the reasons why Trevor Engelson was very hesitant to put her forward for anything, because Meghan was an embarrassment no matter what she was put forward for and managed to get. Yet, despite the challenges, despite being passed over countless times, despite working as a backup model on a game show, Meghan kept pushing. That determination would eventually pay off in July 2011 when she was cast as Rachel Zane on a new USA Network legal drama called Suits. The role changed everything. Suddenly, Meghan Markle wasn't just another struggling actress taking whatever work she could get. She was on a cable television show that, while not a massive hit, had a dedicated following. She was number 6 on the call sheet, not the star, but a significant, recurring character. She had steady work, a steady paycheck, and steady exposure. It was during her time on Suits that Meghan began cultivating the public persona she would carry forward: the humanitarian, the feminist, the woman of substance who cared about more than just her next role. She started a lifestyle blog called The Tig in 2014, where she shared her thoughts on everything from wine to travel to women's empowerment. She became a World Vision Global Ambassador and worked with organizations like One Young World. The girl who had once held briefcases as a backup model, if she was called at all, was carefully constructing a new identity. And when she met Prince Harry on a blind date on July 1, 2016, that new identity would be put to the ultimate test. To understand the full picture of Meghan Markle's journey from Hollywood hopeful to Duchess of Sussex, we must examine the relationships that defined her path. Relationships that some say reveal a pattern of using people as stepping stones toward greater ambitions. The Trevor Engelson chapter of Meghan's life is particularly revealing, not for what Meghan herself has said. She's spoken very little about her first marriage, but for what those close to Trevor have shared in the years since their relationship ended. Trevor believed in Meghan. As a talent manager and producer, he was in a unique position to help her career, opening doors and making introductions that an unknown actress could never secure on her own. He believed the lie one commentator noted during the broadcast. He believed that she sincerely loved him. Those who knew the couple described Trevor as devoted, perhaps even smitten. Meghan, for her part, seemed equally committed, at least on the surface. She would reportedly call him Trevity Trev, a cutesy nickname that suggested intimacy and affection. She spoke about their future together, about building a life, about the impossibility of living without him. "Oh, I can't survive without Trevity," she would say, according to those familiar with their relationship. "I don't know what would happen to me if anything should happen to him." But then came Suits. The show began filming in Toronto in 2011, requiring Meghan to spend months away from Los Angeles, away from Trevor, immersed in a new world of actors, producers, directors, and possibilities. At first, the couple tried to make the distance work. Trevor would visit. They would talk constantly. The marriage, though tested by geography, seemed solid enough. Until August 2013. That's when Meghan reportedly sent her wedding and engagement rings back to Trevor via registered mail, ending their marriage of less than 2 years, without warning, without a face-to-face conversation, without, according to friends of Trevor, any real explanation beyond the fact that she wanted out. Then she gets an opportunity, a better opportunity, and Trev is yesterday's news. One source explained their words, cutting through the romance to reveal what they saw as cold calculation. The divorce was finalized in August 2013, citing irreconcilable differences. Trevor, by all accounts, was blindsided. Friends say he struggled to understand what had happened, how the woman who claimed she couldn't live without him had so cleanly, so efficiently cut him out of her life. But it's what came next that truly illuminated the pattern, if one believes the sources close to Trevor. In subsequent years, as Meghan's star rose as she began dating celebrity chef Corey Vitiello in 2014, and as she eventually met Prince Harry in 2016, reports began to surface about Meghan's methods. Bethany Frankel. The reality television star and entrepreneur would later reveal her own connection to Trevor, describing him as either a friend or potential romantic interest. And it was through these connections that more information leaked out. Television host Megyn Kelly, who claimed to be friend of a friend with Trevor Engelson, dropped a bombshell revelation during one of her broadcasts. Meghan Markle had allegedly created a mood board or vision board of her future, and Prince Harry was on it. Not a prince generally, not royalty as a concept, but specifically Harry, the younger son of Princess Diana, and Prince Charles, the eligible bachelor who represented not just wealth and status, but global fame and historical significance. When news of Meghan and Harry's relationship became public in October 2016, Trevor reportedly said just 3 words that would echo through royal circles: "Oh, she'll close." It was a comment loaded with meaning, suggesting that once Meghan set her sights on something, she would pursue it with unwavering focus until she achieved her goal. Whether this was admiration for her determination or a bitter observation from someone who felt used, the interpretation depends on who's telling the story. The relationship with Harry moved at lightning speed. They were introduced on that blind date on July 1st, 2016. By November 8, 2016, Kensington Palace released an unprecedented statement confirming the relationship and condemning the racist and sexist treatment Meghan was receiving from the press. They were engaged on November 27, 2017. Harry proposed with a custom ring featuring diamonds from Princess Diana's personal collection. And they were married on May 19, 2018, in a ceremony watched by 29 million people in the United States alone, and an estimated 1.9 billion worldwide. It was a fairy tale, or so it seemed. The American actress who had struggled for years, who had worked as a backup model on a game show, who had been number 6 on the call sheet of a cable drama, had become the Duchess of Sussex, married to a prince living in Windsor with the entire world watching her every move. But relationships, particularly relationships built on vastly different expectations, rarely survive the pressure of reality. Harry, by multiple accounts, was deeply in love with Meghan from almost the moment they met. He saw in her someone who understood the difficulty of living under constant media scrutiny, someone who had dealt with public criticism, someone who could be his partner in modernizing the monarchy and making it more relevant to contemporary issues of race, gender equality, and social justice. Meghan, for her part, seemed to believe that joining the royal family would give her the platform she had always craved, a global stage from which she could champion causes, influence millions, and cement her legacy as something far more significant than a television actress or even a princess. She would be a force for change, a voice for the voiceless, a modern woman transforming an ancient institution. The reality, however, was far more complicated. The royal family operates according to rules and hierarchies that have been established over centuries. There is a pecking order, a way things are done, traditions that cannot simply be discarded because they feel outdated. And Meghan, according to multiple sources, both inside and outside the palace, struggled with being told no, with being advised that her ideas, while potentially good, needed to fit within established protocols. The same impulse that had driven her to try to turn 2 lines of dialogue into 25, that had allegedly driven her to pursue Howie Mandel across the Deal or No Deal studio, was now colliding with an institution that moved at a glacial pace and valued duty service and tradition above individual ambition. The viciousness that has always been a part of her nature has come out, Lady Colin Campbell observed, where it's not enough that she was busy bigging herself up and trying to get more, but now she has to denigrate the very people who she was at the time trying to exploit. This brings us back to Deal or No Deal and Howie Mandel. The turning point in the Meghan Markle narrative, the moment when the carefully constructed image began to seriously crack, didn't happen all at once. It was a gradual erosion, a series of revelations and interviews and tell-all moments that slowly revealed contradictions between what Meghan said and what others remembered. On March 7, 2021, Meghan and Harry sat down with Oprah Winfrey for an interview that would send shockwaves around the world. It was during this conversation that Meghan first publicly addressed her time on Deal or No Deal, framing it as a dehumanizing experience. "I was thankful for the job," she told Oprah, "but not for how it made me feel, which was not smart. I ended up quitting the show." The implication was clear. Meghan had been a regular cast member who, despite needing the work, had the strength and self-respect to walk away from a job that was reducing her to nothing more than her physical appearance. The narrative gained more traction on October 11, 2022, when Meghan launched her Spotify podcast, Archetypes. In the second episode, titled The Duality of Diva, she expanded on her Deal or No Deal experience, describing feeling like a bimbo, surrounded by other smart women who were being treated as little more than objects to be looked at. "I would end up leaving with this pit in my stomach, knowing that I was so much more than what was being objectified on the stage," Meghan said during the podcast. "I didn't like feeling forced to be all looks and little substance, and that's how it felt for me at the time, being reduced to this specific archetype." The response from the public was mixed. Many praised Meghan for speaking honestly about the objectification women face in entertainment. Others pointed out that she had chosen to take the job, that the premise of the show was always clear, and that many other women who held briefcases had gone on to successful careers without claiming victimhood. But it wasn't until November 2024, more than 2 years after her podcast comments, that people who actually worked on Deal or No Deal began pushing back. Howie Mandel's colleague's revelation to Kinsey Schofield was damning, not because it was cruel, but because it was matter-of-fact. Meghan wasn't even a main cast member. She was a backup. She was barely there. The very premise of her objectification narrative, that she stood on that stage episode after episode feeling diminished, was called into question by people who were actually in the studio. We don't remember her," the colleague said. "We never saw her on set. She wasn't memorable. She wasn't around." The response from those who had been tracking Meghan's pattern of behavior was swift. This wasn't just about deal or no deal anymore. This was about a larger pattern of what they characterized as rewriting history, of taking experiences and reshaping them to fit whatever narrative served Meghan's interests at any given moment. It's this consistent rewriting of history. Schofield said, referring to Meghan's Harper's Bazaar interview and other public statements that had later been contradicted by people who were actually present for the events in question. Lady Colin Campbell was even more direct. She has to denigrate the very people who she was at the time trying to exploit. So all of a sudden, Howie Mandel is somebody, and his show is something that should be denigrated when, in fact, most people who have started on his show have been very appreciative of the chance that they were given. The allegations about Mrs. Mandel's intervention, "You've got to get rid of her," painted a picture that stood in stark contrast to Meghan's victimhood narrative. Rather than a woman being objectified and diminished sources describe someone who was aggressively networking, trying to leverage a backup modeling gig into something more, pursuing the show's host with such determination that his wife felt compelled to intervene. Whether these allegations are entirely accurate or somewhat exaggerated is impossible to verify without more direct testimony from the Mandels themselves. But what's undeniable is that multiple people who were in a position to know people who have nothing obvious to gain from lying are telling a story that contradicts Meghan's public statements. And this matters because it's part of a larger pattern Trevor Engelson used and then discarded. The royal family embraced and then accused of racism. Deal or no deal, a job she allegedly fought to keep and leverage, reframed as objectification and exploitation. The legacy of the Meghan Markle story is still being written, but certain themes have emerged that will likely define how history remembers this particular chapter of royal drama. First, there's the question of truth and narrative. In our modern age of social media podcasts and tell-all interviews, everyone has the ability to tell their story, to frame their experiences in ways that cast them in the most sympathetic light. Meghan has been extraordinarily effective at this, using every platform available to position herself as a victim of various systems: Hollywood's objectification of women, the tabloid press's racism, the royal family's outdated traditions, and alleged cruelty. But as more people come forward with alternative versions of events, people like Howie Mandel's colleagues, people close to Trevor Engelson, and even palace insiders who have spoken anonymously, the carefully constructed narrative begins to show cracks. The question becomes, is Meghan a woman who's been genuinely victimized by multiple institutions, or is she someone who uses victimhood as a tool to deflect criticism and maintain sympathy even as she pursues her own ambitions? The truth, as always, likely lies somewhere in the middle. Second, there's the impact on the royal family itself. Meghan and Harry's departure from royal duties on January 8, 2020, dubbed Megxit by the press, represented more than just one couple's decision to seek financial independence. It represented a fundamental challenge to the institution's relevance in the modern world. Even in their absence from Britain, even in their new life in Montecito, California, Meghan and Harry continue to impact the monarchy. Every interview, every Netflix documentary, every revelation keeps the focus on their grievances rather than the work of the remaining royals. It's a masterclass in controlling narrative even from thousands of miles away. This year would turn out to be Meghan's undoing, Lady Colin Campbell predicted, referring to 2025. And it's been one thing after the other. Whether Campbell's prediction proves accurate remains to be seen, but what's undeniable is that the revelations about deal or no deal, combined with growing skepticism about other claims Meghan has made, have shifted public perception. Polls consistently show that Meghan's favorability ratings in the UK and even in the United States have declined significantly since the Oprah interview. The sympathy that many felt for her in 2021 has been replaced in many quarters by fatigue and doubt. Third, there's the broader legacy about ambition, particularly female ambition. Meghan's story, regardless of which version you believe, is fundamentally about a woman who wanted more than what she had been given. She wanted to be more than a backup model, more than the sixth-billed actress on a cable show, more than a princess expected to simply wave and smile. There's something admirable in that drive, that refusal to accept limitations. But there's also a cautionary tale about what happens when ambition becomes the only value, when the ends justify any means, when people become merely instruments to be used and discarded on the path to greater things. Meghan has never been shy in coming forwards, Lady Colin Campbell said, and that observation cuts both ways. It can be a compliment to someone who refuses to accept the status quo, or it can be a criticism of someone who cannot see beyond their own desires to recognize the legitimate needs, feelings, and boundaries of others. Finally, there's the legacy of the deal or no deal revelations themselves. They matter not because holding a briefcase on a game show is particularly important in the grand scheme of things, but because they represent a pattern. If Meghan exaggerated or misrepresented her experience on the show if she turned being a rarely called backup into being a regularly objectified cast member, what does that say about her other claims? The voice that Meghan has used to speak about objectification, racism, and institutional cruelty has lived on through her production company Archewell, through her Netflix deals, through her various commercial ventures. But that voice now carries less weight than it once did, questioned by people who were actually there, who have their own stories to tell, who refuse to remain silent while their experiences are rewritten to serve someone else's narrative. The story of Meghan Markle and Deal or No Deal is ultimately about more than just a game show or allegations of networking gone too far. It's about the stories we tell about ourselves, the ways we reshape our pasts to fit our present needs, and what happens when those stories collide with other people's memories. You've got to get rid of her. Those words, allegedly spoken by Terry Mandel years ago, may have been about removing a pushy backup model from a television set. But they've taken on new meaning now, a warning perhaps about the dangers of allowing ambition to override authenticity, of crafting narratives that serve our interests while dismissing the lived experiences of everyone else who was in the room. Was Meghan Markle really the objectified victim of Deal or No Deal, or was she the ambitious networker trying to leverage every opportunity? Was she the devoted wife blindsided by royal cruelty, or the calculating climber who used people as stepping stones? Was she fighting for justice and equality, or fighting for attention and sympathy? What do you think? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this deep dive into the Meghan Markle story compelling, please like this video and subscribe to our channel. We dig deeper into the stories behind the headlines, bringing you context analysis and perspectives you won't find anywhere else. The truth, as they say, is rarely pure and never simple, but it's always worth pursuing.